Hello and welcome to A&K's Wheel of Time complete book review. And we today will be going over Book 1, Chapter 6, The Westwood. Now this is it's one of the shorter chapters that we've come across, but for a short chapter it does have a fair amount of interesting information in it, some confirmations of some of our suspicions, which we'll get to in time. And it does raise a few more questions, which we also are going to enjoy finding out the answers to in time as well. So the chapter starts off where the last one ended, that Rand had got all the equipment he needed to build a litter, a little trailer kind of thing that he could carry his injured father on. We find out at the very beginning of the chapter that the wound's not, from a physical standpoint, is not quite as bad as we were initially picturing in the last chapter, like this big stomach wound or something, but it was actually just a light chest wound.
Which is the reason why I said poison.
And proves to, which tends to be the case. So, Rand is putting this litter together.
Well, he first he mends the wound.
True. Turns to his father, makes sure that his father's okay, or as okay as he can be anyway, under the circumstances, and then puts together the litter. There's also a bit of a shoulder strap, so that
harness.
Yep.
Type thing to put together, and puts him on and wraps him around in the blanket
to make sure that he's secure.
Yeah.
And starts walking. Initially goes to the road, and because he's got a lot of thoughts in him in terms of Trollocs here, a fade, and what the heck is going on? Well, this is supposed to be fantasy. It was supposed to be stories from a Gleeman's Tale. It's not meant to be real. What the hell? And so he has already had quite a night, and it's it's not over. So he starts to drag his father to the road, gets to the road quicker than he thought he would, being lost in one's thoughts. It does tend to, you do tend to get places quicker when you're kind of not realizing where you're going.
Well, autopilot, really.
Yeah.
He's in autopilot, and he's mulling over the tactics, remembering, some hunt by sound, some by smell, and the Fade, he's not quite sure how the Fade hunts, but yeah.
Or what its powers are, or what it can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he definitely is trying to keep in mind certain different things. While he's he kind of skipped a bit about, while he's patching up the wound, Tam is grunting and things like that, and then starts to moan. And then he mentions, staying, you got to keep quiet, because obviously his noise attracts them. And he's talking about Tam's mum. So he...
which we get a name for finally, Kari.
Yeah. And he's saying, Mum wants you to be quiet.
Well, Kari, Kari wants to be quiet. There's obviously the mother, or his... Kari obviously didn't hang around for long.
15 years ago she passed away, it said.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he says Mum wants you to be quiet, and then Kari wants you to be quiet. Here, drink this.
So
that he can swallow some water. Which
is also leading credence to, our thought that Rand has got to be in his, late teens, early 20s, kind of age.
He doesn't have a great deal of memories of her, so...
Which is why I'm thinking that he's that young.
Is, because he is so young, did she really die, or did she just...
Go away, maybe? And that was the story that the father told?
That she's passed away.
Maybe.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a thought.
It is a thought. There's no proof to it, or...
I don't know. I love going on these series.
It's the idea, though, because he was quite young, and unless, in the book doesn't actually say that he saw her die. He doesn't actually say that he saw her die. Just that, well, yes. No, but until then, the idea that she's
I'm loving some of
not
these
dead.
theories that we're coming out with, but I'm sure that there are some of our listeners out there who are just cacking their heads off who have read these books before, but still.
Probably.
Anyway, so... but you're right, that Tam is starting to get... due to the fever that's happening with the assumed poison.
It's got to be poison.
I know.
Stop assuming it's poison, man. It's like the sword that struck Frodo.
Talking the Morgul blade.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Anyway, he's getting lost in memory. Tam is essentially getting lost in memory, and he's giving as a little bit of what Rand is doing, and then we'll kind of separate this out in a little bit into what Rand is doing first, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that Tam is saying, because, yeah. All right, so...
I thought you liked doing things in order, otherwise...
I do, but it kind of breaks between the two, and it's a little...
Nah.
But I'm not saying in total, but I'm just saying, for the next part, Rand gets out to the road, and think, okay, no, I can't quite be out because it's too open, too exposed.
But he already knew that. He never planned on going exactly to the road. He just wanted to follow it.
True.
20 paces in. So essentially all he does, builds a litter, tends to his father as much as he can, walks to the road, and then walks parallel to the road, 20 paces away from it, so that he can get to the village. And that's essentially all he does.
And the rest of the time
it's just all conversation. So
walking
if you really
on...
want me to do
yeah.
If you really want me to
that's
paraphrase it, that's essentially what he does. And then he crouches down because he spots trouble. Right? And then he keeps an eye on it, and then eventually, after painstakingly long time to him, goes away. Okay, and then that's the end of the chapter.
Yeah.
And he finds out
as far as the physical stuff that Rand does.
The physical stuff.
I do just want to talk about that trouble for a little bit, because I've got it.
But that's at the end, and then you're missing all of things. You're missing all of... See, you're doing it out of order now.
Only slightly.
Ah.
It all kind of happens... I do understand, I agree that some of these ramblings, but the key rambling happens right at the end. The main point that I want to discuss as far as the ramblings that Tam's saying happens right at the end of the chapter. It's the last thing he says.
Well, no. There's plenty of
ramblings
that he says. We're not talking about Rand. I thought we'll separate it out.
Okay, we are.
Okay.
All
now,
right,
in terms of what Rand goes through, with the Black Rider appears again.
Now, I am questioning that Black Rider.
About whether or not he's friend or foe.
Yeah.
Nah, but he's got to be, because he hates the description that Rand gives, that he hates life.
Initially, yes, but we don't know who the Rider is yet.
Yeah, but he still seems very dark.
True. But, I don't know, there's a part of me which is... Again, alright, for those who are keeping, like an other show jar, for me, here's where I'm going to make another kind of reference. Darth Vader.
He's Darth Vader?
Maybe.
What, good that's been turned bad, that will eventually go to the light if you have a son?
Maybe.
So what you're saying is his son?
Maybe.
Oh my goodness! Wow,
it's a thought.
That is out there, man.
Well, we don't know, as thing yet. I mean, Darth Vader was ended up going pretty well into the dark side for a while, as this guy obviously is, or seems to. Or
he's a shadow or a remnant thereof of his former self.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, we don't know who this writer is, but it could be. Maybe not have ill intent toward Rand particularly. Maybe he's trying to find his son, kind of do the whole, join me and together we will rule the galaxy as father and son. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. Everything screams ill intent.
Yeah, I'm not going to dispute that, but I don't know. I'm just having some rather... I don't know. It's mainly because we don't know who this writer is yet. And what his true intentions are, but it's another idea. But part of the reason why another thing though, with he was being followed by Trollocs. Now my question is, was he being chased by the? No, I'm talking the Rider.
No, the Rider wasn't.
Yeah, he was.
The Trollocs came into the farm.
There were 20 Trollocs following the Rider.
Yeah, Because they're servants of him.
But it didn't seem to be that way. It seemed like the rider was running away from them.
I don't know.
At least that's the way I read that. Because it says, what man would turn their back to a Trolloc?
Yes.
And I agree. I can only think of two people.
Because
their commander.
He is their commander.
Their commander, or he's running.
No. He's the commander. Either that or he knows.
Maybe that is the
Fade.
Fade.
Can't do anything. And that's what I'm thinking. Is that
the rider is the Fade?
Yes.
Well, there's another
possibility. Is that he is the person that commands them.
Yeah, maybe.
Very bright and intelligent.
I don't know. The way that that it was phrased in there, though, it didn't quite
sound like he was the Fade exactly. It sounds like he's an extra bit, and other.
Yet another, you'll call it third party, although we're up to like fifth or sixth by this point, but still.
He could. I still think that he could be that dude that was at the beginning, and I've forgotten his name now because we forget. We are sorry. We're not feeling well, so it's been a while since we've done a recording, but he could be the Dark One's servant.
Maybe.
So there's that possibility, but essentially that's the crux of what happens to Rand in terms of physical things that happen. It repairs the wound as much as he can, makes the litter, puts that on the litter, and then essentially starts walking to town. It's basically all that, and then of course hides from the rider and the Trollocs that are on the road.
Yeah,
and that's essentially what happens to him.
Yeah.
In terms of walking, but in terms of conversation of Tam's ramblings and the effects.
And here's where things really get interesting, at least for me. I mean,
well, first of all, before you go too far into your thing, there is interesting notes while he is going through. Since how you wanted to do it out of order this time for some reason. On his way to Emmons Field, obviously, when he gets to the road, there is an interesting part where he's talking about the war, different parts of war and destruction and stuff.
It was obviously some kind of massacre.
Yes, it was. But what I found particularly interesting...
And this is a massacre which involves someone named Lemon. And a sin of some kind that he did.
Hang up. But the interesting part was that they came over the dragon wall like a flood. Assuming, to me, I'm thinking, okay, either Tam is excessively old, or this madness and this time of madness and this
is not as long as we thought.
Is not as long ago as what originally happened. It's and that somehow. Previous generations have specifically made it so that to the younger generations that it happened a long time ago instead of
maybe,
but
trying to soften the
blow possibly,
or the information anyway, make it not quite seem so
scary.
Bad.
But see, because Tam, he says, the Dragon War, which leads me to believe that he was
in the army
involved with, and at the time of the dragon. The original dragon's, essentially self-destruction.
Maybe the dragon is Lemon.
That's definitely a possibility, and in all honesty, that's kind of what I was thinking, because you don't actually hear his name.
True.
All you hear is that he was called the dragon, and that essentially he killed his family and everyone in his castle, from what we gather,
which may be
the surrounding city.
Which may be the massacre that
we're talking about.
Here.
I think there's more to this massacre than just his madness, because later on, while he's having his whole continued more in-depth delusion, or not delusions, sort of like memory fever.
Yeah.
He then references a tree.
Yes.
A very particular, very rare, and possibly sacred tree.
Known as the Tree of Life, for which there is only known to be one.
Yes, and that there was no seeds, that it couldn't seed. Where is it? It's called the Astoria tree.
Asvidera.
Asvidaria.
Yeah.
Anyway, tree. But basically, it's said to make no seed.
And
And they brought a cutting to him,
yep.
to the kingdom, to presented it to the king, and then they let it grow. And for 500 years, it grew in
This kingdom.
in the kingdom, I'd say. Well, possibly
still...
in the king's garden.
Yep.
But then the king, for some unknown reason, Laman, I'm assuming it has to be Laman because it's, the blood.
Maybe
is
that's
the
what
price
it said
for
was.
Laman's pride.
Yeah.
Because he cuts the tree down. After 500 years, he then cuts this priceless sacred tree down that these others that we don't know about have
Yet.
have given him. They're a warring people, from what I can gather. They don't make peace. They just,
Another word for them was savages.
that they were savages. That they don't care for anything or anyone
I'm
but
kind of
themselves.
thinking,
They don't necessarily like or negotiate with peace with strangers.
Was there a race of people, those who have read the Aragon books?
Okay, darling, there are lots of races in the Aragon
No,
books. Which ones are you talking about?
the Cull, the
orcs.
No, the Cull.
The Cull, yeah.
Because I'm kind of having a similar kind of image to them. Because the Cull in the Aragon books were also viewed, by others anyway, to be a very savage people.
But they were very cultured and they had a lot of... Yeah, but okay, and then the reason why they attacked was because that was how they attracted a mate. They had to...
And they were warlike.
They had to...
Yeah.
They had to show their prowess.
Survival of the fittest.
Yes.
Essentially.
Essentially, in order to be able to attract a mate, they had to prove their strength and prove their worth to be a good mate, a good provider.
Yeah. And protector and whatnot. And it also and that's how promotions in their army and whatnot happened in some respects.
Yeah.
And just so I can do a plug for them as well, because, again, this is me at Star Trek kind of reference. But kind of to the Klingons in Star Trek as well, have a very similar kind of culture. I mean, they are seen very much as a warlike type people. But as we go further into the Star Trek series and the race gets developed more, we see that it's not savage at all, but it's actually a very that they do have, although granted in the lower ranks rather than the higher echelons. I have to very much agree with this particular sentiment that honor and tradition is very big with this aggressive. I do agree with aggressive, but they are cultured, and there's a really rich, deep culture there.
The only thing I remember about them is that they were very conniving.
That was the Romulans.
Oh, that was Romulans. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. I've only watched that thing once, so,
Trying to get her to watch her again, but
yeah,
she's made...
luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Anyway, to get back on track. So, Rand is hearing his father talk about this...
These others.
These others.
Definitely...
Could
they're
it
not,
be...
they're not friendly to strangers. And that could be
the
that
Aes
they've
Sedai,
been attacked...
maybe?
I don't know. It could be that they've been attacked so much that they don't trust strangers anymore, and so they thought, okay, well, maybe they saw something in him as a very young king, or not Lemon, because it was 500 years that it grew. So obviously, previous
maybe a couple
ruler,
of generations.
Yeah, had proved something to them, had been
unless it's a long-lived race, which is not a which is another
possibility, a long-lived race, and that's a possibility too. Either they're extremely long-lived, or it didn't happen as long ago as was eventually told. But 500 years for a tree to go, it's got to be a long-lived thing, which means
either a long-lived race or a multi-generational thing.
Yeah. But they must have seen something in this previous king, because they gave him a tree, a sacred tree, of which was extremely rare because he couldn't seed from it, and they gave it a sapling of their tree, and it was essentially called the Tree of Life. Now, Rand sort of related it to the story of the Tree of Life, and the Green Man. So it could be that there are a couple of different stories that really sort of mesh into the one, and and all of them combined has created the maddening
Maybe
that had occurred. There's definitely a battle. So it could be that a combination, obviously because he chopped down this tree that was sacred to them, then attacked.
Maybe that was Laman's sin which caused it.
Which caused the devastation. He went mad as a result of possibly chopping down this tree. Or, as a twist, it could be that the reason why he chopped down this tree is because it was actually affecting his kingdom's minds and things like that. It was actually like with the Romans with the Trojan horse, that the sapling did something magically or genetically or mentally to damage his people, and he saw it and destroyed it to prevent its destruction, or to prevent its
to protect his people, maybe.
Yeah, to protect his people and to prevent it from causing any more damage, and as a result of it ended up causing destruction on himself and his people anyway.
Maybe.
It's twist.
We do have a lot of theories in terms of this, and I'm sure there are some of you who are listening to this podcast who are just kind of going, "Wow, these guys are really off the planet." But it's going to be interesting to see exactly how either A, how far off the mark we are, or B, how close to the bullseye we're by miraculous kind of thing happening at the moment.
By some things. And then obviously he goes into the war. He goes back into the war a little bit. So, because he mentions the Green Man and the Tree of Life. He's keeping out for the Trollocs. The litter is getting heavier on Rand. So he's kind of, Tam's sort of going in and out, and he sounds like he's breathless. But then he goes more into the war a bit more, or so into the battle. So there's definitely a battle.
And here's where we find out the real interesting piece of information.
It's after the battle, clearly.
Yeah. He's noticing that there are both men and women in this army. So it's a kind of mixed army in that respect.
Yeah, which is very odd, because either he was a part of it or he was just a witness of it, or both. Because
I'm going to say part of, because but somewhere in the back lines or something.
Somehow he survived.
Because with the way, it's just the way that he was fighting at the farm. He knows how to use a weapon.
He does, but he said they came over the wall and they said that they were savages and things like that. So it could be two different battles that he's referencing, though. Because
I agree with you on that one.
One's in a city,
and
he
one's
starts
on
off
the
in the city,
mountainside.
and then the other one is a mountainside where there's desert
or snow,
because desert and snow, because he's saying that it's hot, and it's on a mountain slope, and then he's smelling it, he's seeing it, and then he hears a baby cry.
He's trying to get away from the smell of death.
Well, yeah.
Because he comes across this next particular scene. He comes across as he's trying to get away from all the death and
death
massacre that he's witnessed already.
Yeah.
And as he's running away or trying to get away from this.
And obviously it was widespread. It must have been both outside of the kingdom's walls and inside the kingdom's walls.
Which leads me...
he must have been inside the kingdom's walls
initially,
and progressed to outside,
to leave, to get away from it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then as a result, but it's also like he's sort of detached too, because he's saying there were women in the fight alongside the men sometimes. But why would they let her come? So it's almost like he's sort of surprised that the women were fighting alongside the men.
I would agree with you on that one.
So it's almost like he's not sort of part of their culture.
Well, this is sounding like it's the others that we're talking, not his own.
Possibly, yes.
Because he would be familiar with how his own would fight.
Yes, that's true.
So
you're saying, you're saying he's from that kingdom. He's from the dragons.
Kingdom,
and the others were fighting, and they brought
And
everyone
they had men and women kind of army.
alike, and they just
Yep.
they brought everyone.
No holds barred, you will die.
You will die because you've destroyed this very sacred.
Or whatever the
loving
reason
tree.
was. I mean, we're assuming that's... No, but that,
well, it's gotta be.
we're assuming that was the trigger.
Yeah, it's got to have been, because it was a tree that was sacred.
I'm not
He
disputing
mentions
that. I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying that at this point, that's an assumption. We don't know for a fact that that's what happened, but...
Well, it says blood was the price.
Yes.
For the chopping down of the tree for
Yes.
his pride, Laman's pride. So it is the cause of and effect as a cause of chopping down this very sacred 500-year-old peace tree, like peacekeeping tree. Like it was a symbol of peace.
I get it.
And he chopped it down, and it's been there for 500 years, and he's chopped it down. So it's monumentally important to this race.
And that I'm not disputing.
Whoever this race is, and he is, and it would also explain why he doesn't look like anyone else in the village potentially as well, because he's come from this other race.
Yep.
And the woman has given birth in just before dying of her wounds.
Yep.
And then, of course, he comes across her. She's covered him with his cloak, but the wind's blown the cloak away. And then that's where you get the description of the snow as well.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
And so I'm assuming... this is another assumption, is that Tam's wife, Kari, was either there or... He took the baby home.
No, he took the baby home. He couldn't just leave him there. They couldn't have children of their own. He knew. He also knew that his wife had always wanted children, and he knew that she would
be a loving and caring mother,
and that she would want this child. Like that, if she couldn't have her own child, that she would look after a baby.
And we find out the child's name.
Yes.
Let's say it together. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, come
Don't
on.
steal my thunder.
It was Rand.
Yeah.
And that Kari obviously named him because he says, yes, lass, that's a lovely name. It's a good name, Rand. And then, of course, when Rand hears, that's the very last thing that Rand hears before he falls to his knees.
Yeah, understandably stunned. What the heck? Tam, you're my dad.
Yeah.
This is just a fever dream. It's not real. You're my dad.
Yeah.
And I've got
all the strength essentially went out of his legs, and he's like,
what the hell?
Yeah, and he didn't listen to anything that he said after that, which I kind of understand, but almost kind of like, but I want some more juicy bits.
I do understand though, because I've got an adopted brother and an adopted sister, and we've while they've known essentially right from day one, that that they were adopted. My parents never hid that from them. They have always been raised to be, my brother and sister, and and children to like natural children to to my parents. But for someone who has always had this image in their head of you're my dad, to finally hear that, wait a second, biologically speaking, you're not. I can certainly imagine that being one hell of a bombshell. Mm. And I can certainly understand Rand reeling from that kind of information.
Mm. And at that particular point, in serious danger in some cases, because if a Trolloc was to come across him, and he says it himself,
I'd just be able to look.
He'd just be looking,
stunned with this information that I wouldn't be able to react to anything else. Mm. Which I do, which I can completely understand. So he
does get to a point where he's able to stand up and sort of find strength to keep going, but it's still reeling in his head, and it makes him question who he is. I do think that you are possibly right there with the whole that she was from the other side, and that Rand's come out. Tam has come out from the city, being one of the possibly only survivors, and has taken this child home to
raise him and care for him.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily home, because of course if he lived in the city, than he and his wife. Somehow his wife survives
Well,
too.
this is where another Aragon reference is going to come in for me. I'm kind of picturing Brom.
I'm sorry, you went from one series, Aragon, which is Lord of the Rings, to Brom, which is Aragon.
Aragon is not Lord of the Rings.
Aragon's not Lord of the Rings.
I'm saying Aragon, not Aragorn.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Sheesh. Okay, our listeners are rolling their eyes right now.
And they're two similarly pronounced.
I'm talking about Cull. When are Cull in Lord of the Rings, dear?
Yeah. Although, I have to say, their orcs and the Cull are very, very similar described.
No.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not.
Oh, forget it.
But anyway, we'll save that argument for non-recording time. But anyway.
I had the similar
Since when do orcs have any kind of honor? They're just out there savagely killing whatever they come across.
No. I said description. I did not say anything about culture.
Culture is part of the description, dear.
No.
Yes.
No. Description of physical characteristics. Physical.
They're human-like. That's huge.
No. They were not human-like. They had pointy ears and the... Never mind.
Anyway, where were we?
I don't know. I can't remember the point anymore.
That's right, Brom. We're talking about, because what actually happens with Brom is that Brom takes Aragon, who we find out quite a way down the series, and spoiler alert for those who haven't read it, I do apologise for this. Feel free to skip the next 30 seconds to a minute if you don't want to hear it. But Brom takes his newborn son to...
No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does.
He doesn't take his newborn son.
His wife does. Good point. But he goes to watch over.
Actually, technically they weren't married, but anyway, that's beside the point.
Partner. Whatever.
He finds Aragon, who is his son, and then eventually trains him.
But before we get there, he actually he finds him in this backwater place where his mother had actually taken him to keep him safe.
Yes, taken to his sister. Sister. Yeah, they're sisters.
Yeah, sister brother.
Yeah,
brother sister thing.
No.
Yeah, Garrow
The two were sisters. Garrow married his sister's. His sister.
Her sister.
Her sister. Yeah, that's it.
Really?
Yes, the two women were sisters, which makes Garrow.
I thought Garrow was.
No.
Sylvana or whatever her name is.
No, sister.
Yeah. So it's it's brother-in-law, sister-in-law thing.
Yes.
Oh,
but the sister was still alive at the time.
Anyway, she. It seems to be a bit of a recurring theme. Let's hide the son. Hide the kid in a backwater area where he's not going to be found. You got Luke with Tatooine, another Star Wars reference. Harry Potter in Little Whinging.
In Muggletown, no less.
Yeah, in the heart of Muggletown, essentially.
Oh, my goodness. You just wanted to strangle that family sometimes, didn't you?
Yeah.
Especially the aunt. I'm like, really? This is your sister's son.
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone could do that.
Neither do I. But anyway, it just seems to be a recurring theme in many a story that, let's hide, hide the kid in a backwater area and hope that he's not going to be found. And whoever Rand truly is, I do have
a question now as to whether Tam even actually knows who he is.
I don't think he does.
Because he found the mother, but he may not necessarily know.
No, he was the... I agree with you on that one.
He was just curious as to why they would let a pregnant woman
come to a battlefield.
And then give birth to a son, only to die of her own wounds, and then eventually know that child, too, is going to die.
Really good questions, which we'll no doubt find out in later chapters. So, as an FYI, the next chapter, Chapter 7, is entitled Out of the Woods. So, what do you think is going to happen with this one?
Well, I'd imagine that he obviously is quite close to getting to Emmons Field now, so I would say that he's going to be close to the village. What happens in the village, or whether it's going to be safe there or whether they're going to be overrun
By Trollocs
and whatnot is a different story. Look, it could be that there are enough men around that they possibly wouldn't attempt to go into the village. And there is definitely some skilled warriors in there. So they could be safe there temporarily for a very short time. But I imagine that essentially it would be the last little bit of distance in the woods, and then trying to get into the village without necessarily being spotted that he has gone
by bad guys anyway
into the village.
Yeah.
And I'd imagine he'd head straight for the inn, obviously.
Or for wherever Nynaeve is.
Yeah, that's a possibility too. But
because
either
Nynaeve's
way,
a healer.
Well, that is true. But if she lives on the outskirts of the village, he might just be running straight into the village to get someone else who
to help
could run.
Get Nynaeve.
Yeah.
Nynaeve, come here rather than. Because
I agree. Dragging the litter all the way to her.
Yep, no, that's fair. That's a possibility. I do tend to agree with you that that with the upcoming chapter, it's going to be about his entry into back into Emond's Field with his injured father, and there's going to be a strong reaction by, I'm not necessarily saying a big group, but by those who see that Rand coming in with an injured Tam. There's going to be lots of curiosity. What happened?
I'd imagine that the council is very much going to want to speak to him.
Yes, I would agree. And it wouldn't have surprised me if Sen Buey, the doomsayer of the town, ends up saying, "See, I told you," of some form. And so, yeah. But we'll see what happens when we do our next recording. So, yeah, once again, we thank you all for listening. If you do want to communicate with us about how ridiculous some of our theories are, or kind of comments and queries and whatnot, we're happy for them. You can contact us on my email address, which is warrior, WARRIOR 346 @yahoo.com, or on my Twitter feed, which is @warrior346. Thank you very much all for listening, and may the wheel of time keep on spinning.